Oyemi Ajayi, thank you. We're now being joined by a former Speaker, House of Representatives, Honorable Umar Ali Naaba. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us on the conversation.
Thank you very much. You're welcome.
We also have here with us the Chairman, Senate Committee on Information and Media, Senator Aliyu Sa'abi Abdullahi. Thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All right, and then, of course, we have with us in the studios here the Professor of Law, former Governor of Edo State and two-time Senator, Senator Userime Osumbo. Professor Osumbo, a pleasure to have you join us on the program this morning.
Good morning.
All right, gentlemen, let's begin the conversation. We'll be joined subsequently, by the way, by a legal practitioner, of course, a familiar face on Good Morning Nigeria. That's Kayode Ajulo. You're all lawmakers, whether current or past. You know, you continue, of course, to retain your experience as well as knowledge of the inner workings, together, of course, with the clashes that you had during your time with the executive branch. But let's begin with the former speaker. You had quite some running battles with the President Obasanjo while he was in charge of the executive branch at the federal level. But why do we have these recurrent clashes between the executive and the legislature over the proper exercise of the power of appropriation, otherwise clearly stipulated by the Constitution?
I think this has to do with a number of issues. One, definitely there is the issue of ego. Ego is involved. The Constitution has clearly indicated that any money that is going to be spent by the executive on behalf of the whole nation for the purposes of development must be approved by the National Assembly. It must be spent in the manner prescribed by the National Assembly. These are the wordings of the Constitution. And there is a reason that the Constitution, or the system of separation of powers, has given latitude to the legislature to look at the budget, or for the executive to bring the budget to the legislature, for the legislature to be able to approve the budget. Therefore, you don't bring a document to the legislature and the legislature just stamps it and take it back to you. I think this is abnormal. Therefore, the legislature has to look at the document and ensure that whatever is to be done, is done rightly and correctly. And in that process, the grounds of the executive is normally that the legislature has increased the budgetary provisions. And budgetary provisions are just estimates. Even the Constitution indicating that whatever the executive has brought to the legislature are mere estimates. But my first experience with the budget, when it was brought to us in September 1999, was that the executive brought the proposals even in the form of a bill. A bill is only prepared by the majority leader of either the House or the Senate. The executive should not bring estimates in the form of a bill, because when you prepare a bill, it is a legal document. And the estimates are not final until passed by the National Assembly. Therefore, it is the majority leader in the Senate or in the House of Representatives that is supposed to prepare a bill. But that is presupposing that the majority leader would have been briefed by the executive arm, because the supposition is that the executive and the legislature work together because they are members of the same party. But when we came in 1999, that synergy, that party spirit was broken by the president himself, because the synergy that was supposed to exist between the party, the executive, and the legislature, which used to happen back in 1979 when we had a democratically elected government, became elusive. And this principally occurred because the president did not, I think the president, and I believe this to be true, that the president we had mistook civilian rule for democracy. And that has been the bane of all our budgetary matters from 1999 to today. Successive presidents, particularly those from the military, mistake civilian rule for democracy. They don't accept the fact of democracy. They don't accept the fact of working together with institutions in order to fashion out governance. So these are some of the problems that are bedeviling the budgetary process in this country.
Okay, let's bring in...
The former Speaker of the House of Reps. One of the points that Professor Osumbo made, Senator Osumbo as well, made is to the effect that, look, the tension that we are having which manifests now in the frequent altercations between the legislature and executive is the necessity to allow the president manage the economy, because that's a overarching responsibility, together with the yearly challenge of appropriating funds to ensure that there's proper management of the economy. What is your response to this? Bearing in mind that there is a sense in which also the National Assembly also oversights the economy through its interactions with various NTAs, whether not the executive or otherwise.
Well, my own response to this quagmire is simply that any president who is elected on the platform of a political party is supposed to be under the direction of that political party. And I believe that all our political parties have manifestos, and before getting elected, they must have made promises to the people as to what they are going to do. And I believe that before anything, at the stage of preparing a budget for the nation, before anything, whoever the president is must invite the party and sit with the party and ask the party, we are now in government. What did we promise the people? And what are in our manifesto that people had seen and elected us? This is very, very important. Then the legislature, represented by the presiding officers, must be invited. So now you have the executive, you have the legislature, and you have the party under the umbrella of the party. Allow these three institutions to discuss the budget and agree on the principles that must underline the budget. Once that is done and agreed, I'm sure all of these occurrences, unpleasant, would not have been happening. Because whether we like it or not, a president is not elected, he is not elected by himself. People elect the party. And in the outlet analysis, it's the party that is going to defend the president and the government as a whole. Therefore, the key here is the involvement of our political parties in our budgetary process. We must carry our parties along. I believe that once that is wherever any explanation is supposed to be given to any people or persons or constituencies or zones, the party can manage that. Because as you said, the president is responsible for managing the economy. And that is true. And the president must therefore have a clear perspective. And to have that clear perspective, before doing anything, any party that is supposed to bring about problems to him must be carried along in whatever is going to be done. This issue of carrying along is what we are having to contend with today. What is happening today is that, for example, I am witness to this, I've been party to this. You know, even with the tensions between 1999 to 2003, when I was Speaker of the National Assembly, even with those tensions, we had a situation whereby every week, every Monday, we used to have a caucus meeting in the villa. And those caucus meetings helped greatly in minimizing the tension arising out of the relationship between the executive and the legislature. Every Monday, at least up to 2001, these caucus meetings were taking place until Senator Nyamade was removed as the chairman of the party. That was the end of any caucus meeting. And today, I think the last caucus meeting we have of our party, the ruling party, the APC, in the villa was in February 2016. This is 1 year, 4 months today. We have never had any caucus meeting. And therefore, I believe that there must be a situation where the party and the president and leaders of the National Assembly sit down and discuss all of these matters before initiating anything. Agree on some principles, you know. I know that since the inception of this administration, there has never been a point where the president, the speaker, the Senate president, and the party chairman sat together in a room and decide the budget or any other thing. This must be corrected.
Okay.
Let me first of all go back to my earlier point on bringing about harmony, you know, in the budget process. You'll agree with me, that is, if you really understand what used to happen, or what happened between 1979 and 83 over the budget. Throughout the 4 years of that democratic experiment, particularly with respect to the federal government, we had never had issues, budgetary issues, between the executive and the legislature. And that was simply because the fact of democracy was accepted by the head of the executive arm, the party, and the legislative arms. And I believe that once there is consultation, there is consideration and cooperation, we'll have a smooth sail over any budgetary discussion, over any budgetary debate. And you'll agree with me that the ruling party, the National Party of Nigeria, had a manifesto. And they had housing and agriculture as their priority. And these sectors were prioritized in the first budget of the federal government in 1979. And today, every nook and cranny you enter in this country, you'll see those houses. And I'm witness to the fact that a lot of money was spent on agriculture. And these were two things that every member of the party in the National Assembly, then both in the Senate and the House of Representatives, ascribed to. So there was no issue. So what should have been happening, like I said earlier, you know, is a situation whereby you have the president, you have the party, you have heads of the legislature, the Senate and the House of Representatives. You discuss the budget. The heads of the legislature go back and consult their colleagues. The budget is going to be designed. What are your suggestions? Every member of the National Assembly will put in something. It is out of what they put in that the heads of the institutions will now go and discuss with the party and the president and come up with something, so that by the time you come up with something agreeable to everybody is in place. And the moment the budget is brought to the National Assembly, everybody would see that it's not a new document to them. You know, you have taken their suggestions, and the party has chosen certain projects and promised that, look, the other projects, let's leave them until the next budget. So there is consensus. So what is the fuss?
Okay.
But because of their failure to do this, we're having all these problems.
Okay, let's quickly take a question.
There's also a provision in the Constitution that relates to the proper management of the economy for the benefit of Nigerians.
Yeah.
And we've also agreed that, look, the issue of appropriation is one that relates to the management of the political economy. Yeah. There's a point that you raised earlier to say in buttress of what you thought is the power, or what you think rather is the power of appropriation, that in the event that the bill is passed, appropriation bill is passed by the Assembly, and the President declines or refuses or neglects to give his assent, there is a power of override. It comes back to the Assembly, and the Assembly can then veto, can then override the veto of the President or otherwise. That's the question I want to ask of the former Speaker. Let us assume the Assembly has tinkered with the appropriation bill, brought in whatever it wants to bring, it has varied it. And the President or the Governor says, look, I will not give my assent to this. And the National Assembly or the State Assembly decides to then override the veto. So it becomes a law at the state level or an act of the National Assembly. But there's an issue here. How then can you compel full implementation of that law when the executive, who ordinarily is in charge of the resources, is hamstrung by what you have passed if it disagrees fundamentally with the provisions in the bill which then became an act? Right, Honorable Nava.
Well, I will not accept that the President is hamstrung by the action of the National Assembly or by the action of the legislature, because the Constitution has conferred on the legislature the authority to override a president's veto. And that is a legal provision which the president, as the chief executive, whether he likes it or not, he must follow the law. Refusing to act is an impeachable offense because he must comply with the law. That is why there is a law, so that whatever we do is not our heart's desire. I remember in 1990, in 2000, when we passed the NDDC Act, and President Obasanjo didn't like it. He refused to assent to it. And we organized and override his veto in the House of Representatives, and also urged the Senate to do the same, which they did. And therefore, his assent was not needed. But the President did not say he was not going to implement the law. He did. And even though it was selective, But he was doing it. Eventually, of course, over other matters, we had to threaten to impeach him. So I think what is important for us in this country, as far as these issues are concerned, is not to go too legalistic. Because if the institutions insist on applying the full force of their powers, something might happen. And I always kept saying that, look, all of these issues are political issues. They are not beyond us. We must treat we must go about managing our country in a way that is functional.
That's right.
And if that has been the case from 1999 with our presidents, I'm sure all of these issues wouldn't have arisen. So I believe that, like the lawyer was saying, you know, about appropriation, he is one of those lawyers who doesn't believe that the National Assembly has the power to tinker with the appropriation, the estimates brought by the president. But a lot of other people believe that, you know, that is fait accompli. I subscribe to the fact that Appropriation Act or law is like any other law. I can add, I can subtract, I can do anything with it. I can do anything I want to do with it. But I believe that if I go that way, I'm not helping the country. And I expect that the person who has brought the estimates must also be thinking in that way, so that we find a meeting point. And that is why I always keep saying that our ruling parties must be involved in the budgetary process. And unless that is done, you always have members in the National Assembly trying to put one project or another in their constituencies, or rather for their constituencies. The only measure that will present a panacea against that is the party's involvement.
Okay.
I remember when in 1999, the budget of 2000, and there are many projects, and there were projects, you know, introduced by the National Assembly.
That's right.
At a point during one of our caucus meetings, the president said, okay, since we have paucity of funds, these projects from the National Assembly, let us leave them for the meantime, and we'll propose a supplementary budget in September. And everybody agreed, and the caucus now nominated Alex Ekweme to come to the National Assembly to talk to the members of the National Assembly to pacify them, so that the National Assembly allows the budget, you know, to continue and wait for September, you know, so that those projects could now be incorporated. I think
we just have to pause you here, Honorable Naaba. Of course, like Kinsley indicated earlier on, we've got some tweets here with us. Let's quickly take them. Change to Progress tweets. Problem with our budget is that why should NAS members include projects in budget review? Who provides the estimates for these budgets? Now, NAS members should liaise with MDAs during budget preparation process to include their proposed projects instead of blackmailing executive. Ghali and Abba explained how they managed themselves prior to 2001, but what were the outcome of those projects? 85% were abandoned.
Festus Akimboyewa has this tweet. National Assembly should work with the Finance Ministry in order to reach an ultimate compromise before bringing the budget bill to the floor for vote. By the way, it's now the Minister of Budget and National Planning. Now, the problem is National Assembly is tinkering with Nigeria's budget has been selfish and not on the public interest.
And Austino tweets, federal legislators' allocation of 125 billion naira, about 3 times of that of education, is not acceptable and not value for money due to their conduct.
And we have this from Yakzo Lala. It says 2017 budget saga between the executive and proposals, between the executive proposal by its technocrats.
I've been told to give you just less than 60 seconds.
You see, the Constitution clearly said that no money should be spent except in the manner prescribed by the National Assembly. When you go to your doctor will prescribe drugs for you. He will ask you to take 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon, 1 in the evening, or 2, depending. Yes, and you know, this is simply this is simply the issue. You know, the National Assembly has given powers to do whatever it wants with the budget. That's why I said,
Doctor prescribe. Sorry.
That's why I said, you see, for us to be able to do, to bring a panacea and end to all of these problems, we must involve our political parties. Let us work under our political parties. This is all about bringing harmony to governance.
All right, I think Honorable Naaba has made his point, and at this point, we'd just like to appreciate you. Of course, you know, the sum total of what we're talking about is collaboration. We'd like to thank you very much, sir. Former Speaker, House of Representatives, Honorable Ghali Naaba. We also like to appreciate our friend, Chairman, Senate Committee on Information and Media, Senator Aliyu.
Committee on Media and Public Affairs.
Committee on Media and Public Affairs. Thank you very much for the correction. Senator Aliyu Sabi Abdullahi, and of course our own Mr. Kaide Ajula, legal practitioner. Gentlemen, thank you very much. And we now take on sports.
The Nigerian Football Federation, NFF Technical